Power to the polls. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. This has been an extraordinarily long day, and I've been fighting like nobody's business for web access. But I am here, mission accomplished. Let's do the news. So I have a list of shows. I have like pages. I literally have like 2 pages. And there's a lot of stuff that was taking place over the course of the weekend. So let's start here. This is the most simplest and straightforward, and then let's get into weightier issues as the night wears on. The first thing, polling. Polling this far out, I think it gives you a decent snapshot on, I think, where the public is starting off, which I guess has some level of value on where the tenor of the country is. I think, and I know I'm repeating this, but I've said this often, the closer you get to the debates and so forth, you start getting a crystallized view of what people are thinking. This far out, less so. But I still find them interesting to talk about, and I still find them interesting to discuss, hell, even to debate with. So, one of the things that seems to be taking place, 3 polls, 2 polls definitely, with a third that is somewhat of a technical poll that has a little bit humor associated with it. 2 main candidates, Joe Biden and one Mr. Independent Senator for Vermont, Bernie Sanders, have opened up a 10-point lead on one Mr. Donald J. Trump. Now, there's several parts of this that needs to be talked about, though, because there's several little fights that are taking place. One is within the context of states, because the primary is state by state by state. One is in the context of the Democratic voter themselves. One is even in the context of versus Trump, meaning because whatever takes place in the primary, you still got to be able to beat the guy who's in the other arena. It's like after you wipe out the blood from this arena, you got to go to the other one, and that's kind of the point, right? So all of these things are kind of playing out. Now, the polling that I want to show starting off, and there's good and bad about this. So how the Democratic candidates will fare against Trump. Joe Biden, 44-33. Sanders, 42-32. Those are things almost identical. 10 points. Now, you can say that's not that big of a deal. That's just starting out, etc. But in a Fox News poll, you have something similar, where Sanders and Biden open up a 10-point lead. Polling show 49-39% among registered voters nationwide. Sanders held nearly the same advantage, 49-40%, 9 points. 2 different polls, for the most part, the same results. That shows a certain, at least, consistency or continuity. Now, what did I mean by third poll? Because there is one more poll. Now, that poll was leaked. What do I mean by that poll was leaked? Donald Trump's own polling showed that he was in bad straits against the Democratic contenders. More so against against Sanders and Biden. Less so against people like Warren and so forth. But even within those contexts, it was really, really close. But his own polling showed it. He fired his pollster. Now, 2 things on this. That's funny. And it shows a certain continuity with the polling outside of his campaign. But beyond that point, for all those people who are pointing a finger at this, he should have fired his pollster. Not only should he fire his pollster, he should try to prosecute his pollster if they found that the pollster or anybody in that company leaked it. He should go after them. Prosecute is too strong. I'm talking about from not within the government itself. I'm talking about as a private citizen. Yeah, of course you're going to fire the guy. The guy is leaking information. You and I have a business relationship, and somewhere in the context of that business relationship, you leak out information that's somewhat embarrassing to me. Why wouldn't I fire you? Of course I fire you. That's nothing to poke a stick at. That's just how people behave. You should have been fired. Now, let's go into the Democratic primaries itself. Candidates lead Trump. Oh, by the way, one of the interesting things is Elizabeth Warren only leads Trump by 1 point in this new poll. Look right here. Elizabeth Warren, 43 to 42%. That's within the margin of error. Donald Trump has been president for the last 2.5 to 3 years. And Elizabeth Warren, the person who called herself multi-ethnic, or person of color for the last few years, she can only be best them by 2. Do you remember when Hillary Clinton was running against Trump and it didn't matter what he did, she could never really make a lead out? Just saying. Just saying. All right, so let's go within the context of the Democratic primary itself. Now, within the Democratic primary, this gets a little more hazy. We saw in certain places, I think it was like Iowa and some of the other states, where it seems like Sanders was staying constant. I think Elizabeth Warren moved up and Biden was losing ground. And the new Fox News poll, that's not really true. Biden gains 1. Sanders loses ground to some degree, though. Which is where this polling gets a bit interesting. So if you look on a macro scale, they're looking at it and say, well, yeah, we prefer Sanders to Trump by wide margins. But when you get into the polling itself, it gets interesting. Let's see. So look at this part. President Trump officially launches his re-election in June 18th, right? More voters will be enthusiastic if Trump were to win re-election than they felt in 2016. Is that not weird? And maybe not weird, but if you were the Democratic Party, wouldn't you want that to be not true? Like, all right, let's do this first because I'm skipping. All right, let's go here. I'm looking for something specific because I want to give the internal dynamics of the polling itself, not just against Trump. All right. The Fox poll showed Biden leading by 49 to 39 among all registered Democrats nationwide, while Sanders held nearly the same advantage over the president. Right. Come on. Where is it? All right. But a CBS poll confirms a clear Biden lead in battleground states among Democratic voters as a crowded race for the party's nominations begins to take shape. Warren is on the rise. The CBS YouGov battle tracker. No, that's not what I wanted. I'm looking for the Fox News poll. I thought I had the slide up. All right. It basically... Basically, Sanders loses ground in this poll. Biden, for the most part, goes about 1. Elizabeth Warren increases. But again, Sanders is still number 2, but it seems a certain degree of weakness in its position in the primary voters on the Fox News poll. The poll has somewhat of a distribution of people across the political spectrum, so it's not necessarily just one side or the other, even though many of those voters were Clinton voters. That's not necessarily weird, though, if you're talking about like a Democratic primary. The Fox News poll goes into all sort of subjects, and it's, I guess it feels like a centrist poll. I mean, one of the questions, they said the majority, like a large percentage of progressives or majority of progressives were voting for Biden by like 10 points. It's like, what? What? What are you talking about? Is this one of those things where Clinton calls himself a progressive? It's kind of that stuff. But again, I look at this purely through the context of these are going to go state by state and not just state by state. Well, yeah, you win those by states. And the arguments and the fights that are going to take shape are going to take shape within the states. It's too far out for those to have kind of a real resonance. And if I'm being honest, the polling feels fluid. That said, the Fox News poll does show somewhat of a weakness for Sanders, but it's hard to know what that means in the real context of things from the standpoint of a Fox News poll. Many of those people were on cell phones, and many of were things. So it seemed like a somewhat of a decent distribution between cell phones and landlines. But let's keep watching as it goes on. Not to mention the debates are coming up, and this is when it gets interesting and starts to take shape after the debates. That said, looking at it, if your name is Donald Trump, you better hope something changes, because this is not looking good for you, buddy. Now, one last point. I want to talk about the fear quotient. I found this question to be really interesting. They asked people, were they more or less terrified? Meaning, were you more terrified back then, before Donald Trump got elected, than now going into 2020? And when you think about it, I suppose, the moment that you take your shot, it doesn't scare you as much. Or the moment that you take your medicine, you're not overly afraid of how it's going to taste. So in this case, you have this situation where people are less terrified. This argument of Donald Trump is going to eat babies and kick puppies loses a certain degree of oomph because he's been president for the last 3 years. It's like Donald Trump is going to destroy democracy. It's like, but the guy's been president for 3 years. If you're a Democrat, yeah, you're probably going to believe it. If you're somebody else, and you're somewhat of an independent, does it dig into you that way? And so I found that question to be extremely interesting. I found that question to be extremely interesting. Meaning, if you run your campaign like you did last time, where the only thing you focused on was Donald Trump, that's all you focused on. That's the exclusive thing that you focused on. You might have added a little frills here and there, but ultimately your main thing is we need to beat Donald Trump. That argument almost hinges on he is going to burn down the house. And the problem is he's been president for the last 2.5, 3 years. He has not burned down the house, even though he's done some really horrendous things. All right. I don't want to take too much time on this. I'll put these at the bottom. The Fox News poll is like 35 pages. It's a fascinating read. They ask all sorts of questions. They get into Roe v. Wade, all sorts of stuff. But keep in mind, this is a Fox News poll. So they're like, what's more of a problem, big government or big business? It's that type of stuff. It's funny reading some of the questions that they ask these guys. Oh, last point. If you remember, when Trump was running against Hillary Clinton, Trump was far, far, far down in the polls. And not just far down in the polls. Huffington Post had gotten to the point of saying there's no chance for him to win. Nate Silver, no chance for him to win. All of these guys, there's no chance for him to win. And then he wins. They make the argument, they make the point here that Trump's position in the polls is better now than it was back then when he was running in 2016. He hasn't even started running yet. Don't get me wrong, he's been hitting Joe Biden because he's scared of Joe Biden. In his mind, Joe Biden affects the white working class voter that he's was able to get. What he needs to be afraid of is one Bernie Sanders. Because when you look at the polling, he is extraordinarily weak in that very specific point. And the last polling that I was reading, the polling data, one of the questions and the thing that they got into was that the way Sanders matches up against Trump so well is because that voter that Trump was able to pull away from the Democratic Party stays with Sanders. It's not just the millennial voter. He also peels away that particular voter. And look, it's even possible that part of the, Biden does pull that voter away. Maybe Sanders does also pull that voter away. Joe Biden has a certain working man shtick about him. The reality is not so much. I mean, the guy, creature of Wall Street. But let's look at the thing. I follow this stuff early on because I think it's interesting. It's like, it's almost like if you're on a debate thing and you say, okay, what did you think of this before we get into the debates? And then after the fact, you kind of keep the measurement as you go on. You have a running total. This gives you this idea of what it is. It seems extraordinarily consistent that Biden and Sanders are beating Trump, at least if the question or the election was held today. Trump hasn't started running yet, though. Keep that in mind. Trump has not started running this election yet. One Mrs. Thomas, thank you. Robert Pukere, Biden polling high with minimal campaign shows how powerful media messaging affects voters. Yes, people gobble Biden up because of mainstream push. And you know what? And not just Biden, Elizabeth Warren. In these polling, Elizabeth Warren has surged. I mean, she's actually moved. In one of the other polling, she had moved like 1 point. In this poll, she moved several points. It was more than just 1 point. And Sanders lost ground in this poll. But when you're asking them about against Trump, his polling remains. He's stable. He's solid. It's an interesting thing. The interesting part is going to see how this looks when it gets down to the debates. Like, And look, I'm going to have a debate party. I don't know where I'm going to be, but it's going to be at some debate party. And that's when you start. That's when it gets interesting. Debate after debate after debate after debate. And you get to look at the polling trends. Because at that point, I think it starts to crystallize and gets more valuable. But at this very specific point, at this very specific instance in time, when they ask them, Trump, Sanders, Trump, Biden, they are overwhelmingly choosing Biden or Sanders. Cool Blue 71. Quinnipiac poll has 2020 general election Biden -1 point from winning whites nationally, but underperforming blacks and Hispanics. Yes, compared to 2016 by -8 and -13. Yet Biden wins PV, progressive vote. Oh, right. But 13. Yeah. Like, I looked at that and I said, progressive voters. How is he winning progressive voters by 10 points? And then, and this is the Fox News poll. And I'm like, how is he winning progressive voters by 10 points? So at that point, progressive voters are just, any random person saying they're progressive. Then you look further into it and it says under 40, he wins. I forget the distribution, but it's like, how is he winning under 40 when in every other polling thing, the millennials are going, it just gets, yeah, it looks weird. It looks extraordinarily weird. And yeah, how do you underperform blacks by -8 but still win the progressive vote? It's bizarre. Order of chaos. Polls are meaningless. I don't think they're meaningless. I just think this far out, they only give you kind of a contextual, what do things look like now, even though right now things are kind of fuzzy. I don't know. I can't ignore polls. I think they're interesting. Not to mention I do a news show. It's news. You might say it's not valuable news, but it is news. And it's news in the sense of continuity. So, But I agree with you, ish. Does it ish on that? I'll tell you this. The fact that Sanders and Biden are beating Trump double digits, I think that matters, especially since it seems to be consistent across the board, like in multiple polls. The fact that Elizabeth Warren in this poll can only get up by 2 within a margin of error, that's funny. I've argued that her and Trump, she's a bad matchup against Trump. She's an extraordinarily bad matchup against Trump. But I don't think they're meaningless. Meaningless is too strong. I think that if you had a situation where all of these guys were losing to Trump, I think that would be a big deal. I think it would be an extremely big deal. All right, there's these Streamlabs that I can't find because my system is freezing. Bastard. Yeah, man, today was a long day. Extremely long day. I'm visiting, my wife is visiting her dad. And I try to, everything's set up. And I'm like, all right, I need a second monitor because a dog pretty much ate the last monitor. And so it was like, all right, we'll get that. And then I try to connect and there's no signal. There's no Wi-Fi. There's no nothing. And I'm like, all right, let's make this work. Let's figure this out. And for the last few hours, trying to figure out how to make this work. I was thinking about going to an office. I was like, that's not going to work. I was thinking about going to a library. I was like, that's not going to work because the moment that someone pissed me off and I start screaming, they're going to kick me out the library. People are going to be looking at me weird. Thought about going to an office space. It's like $50 an hour. That's not going to work. It takes several hours. I mean, that's just to do the story and to do the research. Sometimes that takes several hours. And so it's like, all right, that's not going to work. And then I was like, all right, well, let's try an extender. And then I was like, well, is it an issue of the signal? Because if it's an issue of the signal, then an extender would just give you the signal, but the signal might be too weak to carry a live stream. A long day. Kills for a living. When the economy collapses, Trump has no shot. His only chance is war. On another note, why is Miss Thomas quitting the show, the Sunday show? You beat your work wife like Sam Cedar. You know what? Somebody called me homophobic because of the work wife thing. Fortunately, I'm not part of the regressive left, if they call it. And there is a certain level of you have to be on drugs. Like, honestly, you have to be on drugs. I had a girlfriend one time where we were going to the beach, and we're in the car. We're going to Virginia Beach. It's like, it's like a 2-hour drive, and the world is good, no issues. We're supposed to be there for like 2 days, 2 or 3 days, and she says, God hates gays. She says God hates gays, and this was this is me when I was less restrained and kind of getting across. Like, I flipped out. Like, and the problem is, it's like you're in a car, you're on a car trip, so you're like, you have like another hour to go, and this woman has just told you she was a bigot, and I'm losing my shit. I'm like, how are you black and hating gays? And she says, I don't hate gays, God hates gays. I said, no, God is your fig leaf that you're hiding behind because you don't have the balls to just say, I hate gays. You put it to God, and then you give it on God. You turn God into a bigot. No, I mean, and then it's like these questions of, so wait, God created something that God knew was going to bust hell wide open? Well, no, God didn't do that. They made a choice. Since when did you start liking men? Well, I mean, no. Based on that logic, you made a choice to like men, or for that matter, to like women. At what point did you say to yourself, you know what? I'm just fuck that guy. I don't want to have sex with that woman, even though I may or may not be attracted to her. I mean, you never made a choice. It was never a choice. You were born one way or the other. And this fig leaf of God is nonsense. It's nonsense. Own it. Just own it. Just say you're a bigot. Now, you can imagine that this turned sour pretty quick. This turned sour pretty quick. Yeah, that turned sour quick. The irony of it is, though, believe it or not, she changed later in life. Because she ended up having a kid that was gay. Who knew? She loved that kid, though. She loved that kid. And in loving that kid, realized, I got this wrong. She realized she had it wrong. People can change when it affects them. As for Mrs. Thomas, no, I don't beat my work wife. Mrs. Thomas is still working in the show. She's working in the back end of the show. She just has a lot of commitments, and those commitments often take her away from the show. And when those commitments take her away from the show, I get annoyed, because to me, the show is a big deal. The show is what my last 3 years, man. And in it being my last 3 years, I want a certain degree of consistency. So I looked at it as I wanted to be us doing it on Sunday at 1 p.m. The show, that is, not sex. And be consistent with it. And, kind of ironclad, like the word of God of sorts. Almost like it's a cosmic thing that it takes place at this particular time on this particular day, in perpetuity, without end, with, that type of thing. And if I'm being honest, she's kicking ass in her own field of influence. She's doing her own job and everything else. She's helping me with this almost as a secondary thing. In some degree, it's not entirely fair to her to have those kind of expectations, for her to kind of put all of her other things to the side and do the show. It's not fair to her at all. So I just kind of made a choice. Made a choice. But she's still helping. I mean, she's still around. And if I'm not mistaken, she's still going to do the Organize with Sanders stuff. So it's not like she's been banished, from the show. She's been banished at all. Mrs. Thomas is doing it up. She, she does medical coding. And I think it was like last year, she ends up getting a degree. I forget the certificate that she got, where she has to get like a certain degree of certification. And there are 2 certifications that she's working for now. There was one that she was trying to take the test for Sunday, and there was another one that she is trying to get before the end of this year is over with. Both of those are extremely studying intensive, and both of those will allow me to be a kept man in a couple of years when she's just making bank. So, no, she's not being beat. She's not being banished. She's not gone from the show. Mrs. Thomas is still hanging around. In fact, Mrs. Thomas is here now. Cool Blue 71, Quinnipiac. I think I said that one. Cool Blue 71, PV equals popular vote. Oh, popular vote, not progressive vote. I'm sorry. Popular vote in 2016. Hillary lost whites nationally by a negative 21. Are you serious? Biden will not lose them by only 1 point. She lost the white vote by 21 points. Cool Blue, I didn't know that. That is brutal. I guess it makes sense, though. I mean, whites look at the Democratic Party as being the party of minorities. And if I'm being honest, she was hugging every black baby she could find. I mean, that woman talking about she had hot sauce in her pocketbook. If you're talking about pandering, that's an understatement. She's alienated a group of people, that she needed to win. The irony of it is, God damn it. This video is supposed to be 10 minutes. This video is supposed to be 10 minutes. If you dedicate all of your resources to a particular battle, so much so that you destabilize your footing and you lose the war, then even if you win that battle, you did a horrible thing. You screwed up. She made several horrible mistakes. One was that she alienated the white vote, which is like 69 to 70% of this country. That is an astonishing thing. I have no idea why you would do that. 13% of the population are black. I think another 15% are Hispanics. And Hillary Clinton was hugging every black baby that she can find. And I kept saying the black vote only makes up 13% of the population. How on earth is this the doom bringer? Like, how is this the thing that allows you to win the election? You're going to get 90% of that vote anyway, on a bad day. How is this, And yet, she did that during the primaries as a way of getting past Sanders. And in doing that, alienating the white vote in the process. Hubris. This thought that you're going to give me the election, not because I earned it, not because you even want me, because you don't want him. And the irony of this, that strategy only works once. Because the moment that he's in office, and as horrible as he is, he's not eating babies. Don't get me wrong, he's ripping them from their mamas, but he's not eating them afterwards. Which is kind of the impression that we were getting before. That political strategy failed magnificently. It failed magnificently. Astonishing. How much did Hillary lead by the last time around at this point? So that's the interesting thing. The polling kind of makes the point that Donald Trump, as bad as this looks for him, was in a worst case scenario back then. They said in that position back then, if you remember, they laughed at the notion of Donald Trump winning the presidency. Do you remember that? Like all of them are around table and Donald Trump president. They laughed. They continuously laughed at the very notion of it. Nate Silver, famously, no chance. No chance. It's astonishing. Utterly astonishing. But they make the point that as bad as this looks, Trump was in a worse place back then, which is so bizarre. It really is. But I would say this. He hasn't even started running. I know they say Donald Trump is terrified of Joe Biden. I don't think Biden is the guy, man. People are looking at this notion of electability, which I know what they're trying to say, but I don't quite know what it means. Meaning, I know what they think it means in the overall general sense of the word, but I don't know what it means in real terms. Does Donald Trump electable? Like, when Donald Trump was running the race, did he have electability, or whatever the hell they want to call it? Clearly, that answer was yes. At the time, nobody thought the answer was yes. My point is this. These guys are running in the Democratic primary. And the goal of it, I would argue, is to put forth a vision that unifies. Now, what that vision is, they're going to fight it out. You have Elizabeth Warren with a foreign policy that's apparently akin to Benjamin Netanyahu. And you have Sanders, who is giving you this kind of lefty foreign policy, this overarching vision, and is chomping at the bit to step into this notion of socialism. And I got to be honest, I agree with him. And I don't agree with him just because his name is Bernie Sanders, believe it or not, even though I know some of you, Bob, will probably say that's all it is, that's all it is. Yeah, Mrs. Tree, yes. No, Mrs. Tree, I know, hold on. There's no magical door. I know I say that all the time. I say it because I need to, sometimes drill it into myself. There is no magical door. Your world is the way your world is because all incentives push for your world to be that way. What does it take to remove or to get rid of or galvanize people in a way that supersedes the organization of the world? And the question becomes, can they? What is the vision that does that? What is the vision that moves, that compels, that get people to look at their world and say, wait a minute, it can be different? Because it can be. It is hard. It's hard. The hardest part is to get people to realize your world can be different. Your world is put together in the way your world is put together, but there's no magic. It is not cosmic force. It is not word of God. It is choice, policy, incentives, the things that people get out of it, the things that people are willing to give in order to keep the world the way the world is. And not just that, even the things that people are willing to cede, meaning the power that the individuals in this country are willing to cede in order to keep things the way they are. Do you really think homelessness is a thing of God? Do you really think poverty is a thing of God? Do you really think homelessness is something that your society even needs to suffer? It is not. It is not. I often ask this point, can we at the very least, you may not entirely agree with the length of my politics. I mean, leave it up to me. I'm saying we need to have civilian control of certain vital infrastructure. Airways, trains, power grids. I do not think those things should be up for private enterprise. I'm sorry, those are vital interests. The prices of those things need to be low. Those things should not necessarily be run at a profit. They're barely making a profit anyway. We should be in control of it. Sanders doesn't even go there. None of these politicians will go to that point. Maybe a Jeremy Corbyn would. Nobody in the United States would advertise that point. However, can we at the very least agree we shouldn't have people sleeping on the streets? And in having people sleeping on the streets, it is more of a hazard, meaning we end up paying more for that guy to sleep on the street. We pay more for poverty. Think about the money that we pay just to keep things the way they are. Understand what I'm saying. Even if you're a right-winger, even if you look at this and say, yeah, those guys need to, pull themselves up by their own bootstraps. They need to, get themselves a job, get off the street, change your piss-soaked pants from somewhere, get a job. Can we at the very least agree? And you don't even have to agree with me. It's somewhat of a flat fact. The amount of money that we spend in society just to keep things the way they are, just to keep things fucked up. How much money do we spend in jails? How much money do we spend on cops when they're arresting people because they had fucked up homes because, of issues of poverty and so forth? How much money do we spend just to keep things the way they are? And would it not be cheaper to keep people off the streets? Would it not be cheaper to ensure people have food, have decent, nutritious upbringings? I guess I'm trying to make the point that there's a cost for people not having the things that they need. And we feel that cost in issues of crime, in issues of mortality, in issues of, childhood mortality, in issues of people being under stress and flipping out in the context of that stress. Why do you want a world to be this way? Why do you want the world to be this way? It doesn't have to be. The hardest thing of that is not the doing it. It is hard to do, but the hardest is not to doing it. It is the getting into people to realize that it's possible. That's the hardest part. Do you realize when you watch Star Trek and people say, God, that's wildly impractical, you're saying that purely from the context of where you are. But whether you think it's impractical or not, fair enough. But that's not really the point. The point of that is to give people this vision of something that's possible. The Harlem Renaissance. Why do you think the Harlem Renaissance was so important? The Harlem Renaissance was important because it allowed whites to see blacks within a context outside of step and fetch it, outside of, blackface and all this other nonsense. It allowed them to see them as actual human beings. This guy has his thoughts. This guy has his feelings. This guy has a house, has a wife, has a kid, he has a life, kind of like me. He has thoughts, he has ideas, he has things that he cares about. Just like me, he's just a person. Just like me. Who knew? All this time I thought he was just my butler. He's a person. Third person. Art. The ability to see other people's context, or see a third person perspective of the context to which you yourself exist, giving yourself a larger perspective of the world. That's why it's important. It's not about, it's human evolution at that point, not necessarily the evolution of individual race or something to that effect. Same thing with Will and Grace. I would argue that Will and Grace did more for gay rights than anything else coming up. And I know there are a lot of LGBTQ communities going to say bad things about me for that. But understand my perspective on this and my reason for thinking this way. It's the same thing about Bill Cosby. Whatever you want to think of Bill Cosby now, yes, the guy's a rapist or a groper, or, yeah, I think a rapist at this point. I think there's like 30 women or something. But before people knew that he was out there, giving women narcotics or giving women roofies, his perspective, the image of him, was Bill Cosby, Bill the Huxtables, lawyer, doctor, and awesome kids. Awesome kids. The number of kids that ended up going to Morehouse and all these schools jumped because of that. Why? People started seeing an image of themselves within those characters. Like this ability to look at that character, that guy who's a doctor and lawyer, and you say, oh my God, we can be that. We can do that. I didn't know that. I've only ever seen us rapping. I've only ever seen rapping and dancing and shit. It matters. It matters. Like seeing those things and being able to see people have those lives. It matters. It matters greatly. So, when you look at stuff like Star Trek, it has that expanding thing to it. It's awesome. Look, this last point. The GOP also employed, voter scan utility. So, Operation Crosscheck. I've argued that the reason why Hillary Clinton lost that race, if it wasn't the Russians. Like, if you're looking for anything other than, certain degree of incompetence, certain degree of failure, certain degree of the public just not wanting her, you look at states like Wisconsin, Michigan, these close states, and you see Republicans employing things like, it was interstate crosscheck, these things of shaving people off the voting rolls. You didn't need a huge number of people shaved off the voter rolls in order to beat Hillary Clinton in the various states. And then they went to the Russians. That's the part that blows me away. She didn't scream to high heaven about the voter suppression and the cheating in the various states. She pointed at the Russians. How weak. How weak. Agree with him or not, Sanders... Agree with him or not, Sanders going MIA on issues or conceding to the party is not uncommon. Unfortunately for some of the garden, yeah. Jason of Detroit, she's on the debate stage. Apparently she is more reverent than the mainstream media and burning in the media Jamarl puts on. What are you talking about? Who are you talking about? Okay, I'm missing. What am I missing? Obama, for all of his faults, made me realize that I can do anything as a 12-year-old. Yeah, right. That's my point. Yes. It's funny. When we were, I remember when Obama got elected. And it's hard to understand this, man. Like, all the presidents have been white. And so you have this extraordinarily complex history in this country, where how you are as an African American has been defined by another race, and that other race define you in ways that was ghastly. I mean, and something that stuck, had a certain stick-to-itiveness throughout the context of history. And Obama wins. And you're like, oh my God. Jesse Jackson cries. Now, when Obama started running, I thought, he's going to win this. He has to win this. And I know that sounds weird, but at the time I was like, there's no way he's going to lose this. From the standpoint of race, I thought the country is looking for the opportunity to put him in office. To, at the very least, it's like the wind was at his back. Let me say it that way. He made it apparent that the sky's the limit. Jason from Detroit. And you know, the funny part is, that like blacks get that. I don't know if whites get that fully. Like don't misunderstand me. It's not that I thought Obama was an awesome president. There were certain things he did, like the Iran deal, like that I was like, good. Even like incremental stuff, but some people would argue that it wasn't so much what he did and so much as him getting elected in and of itself. By the same token, God, what a squandered opportunity. What a squandered opportunity. Crushed and snorted 2020. That's funny. Jason from Detroit. Literally, the way I thought changed, no one thought that shit was possible. Jason, you're right. You know, it's funny. Nobody thought it was possible till it happened. It's like after when he started running. Because when he was running against Clinton, if you remember, everybody assumed that Clinton was going to win. I remember at that point saying, I'm voting for Clinton. In fact, most blacks that I knew was voting for Clinton because I didn't think Obama could ever win. Didn't think he could win. And then he started getting a resonance, and you start getting like momentum. And people are like, oh my God, he's a rock star. And then people felt like it was anti-establishment to vote for the black guy. I've even had friends or guys who I used to work with who said, I voted for him because he was black. I thought he was going to do something different. Now, that guy was a lefty. I didn't realize how much a lefty I was until I became a lefty and self-recognized self. But no, I mean, yeah, acknowledge that. Fair enough. I give you that, man. Trudy, what's happening, Trudy? What's going on, Trudy? I hope everything is well. Skip Rock, progress. What is specific and goal of your progress? Uh-oh. What is this conversation? Skip Rock, I'll take a stray dog over a swamp thing every time. At least it's progress. Jesus Christ. You missed 2 super chats. No, I haven't missed it. Giovanni, Trump didn't win so much as Hillary lost. Yes. You know, yeah. You know, what? Yeah. But is that true this time? Like, you gotta kill him. You gotta kill him the first time. You can't leave that thing alive. My wife and I, we were watching like horror movies, and it never fails. The person hits the bad guy. It doesn't matter who the bad guy is. She hits him. The bad guy falls. And my wife screams, kill it! Hit him again! And invariably the character never does. The character runs away and the bad guy gets up. Yeah. She needed to win that this time. Because I don't, like, the argument weakens. It depends on the argument. But the argument that Trump is a monster, Trump is going to eat babies, Trump is going to kick puppies, Trump is going to end the world, that argument weakens the moment that you have 4 years of Trump, and he doesn't do that. He doesn't do that. And the irony of it is, I want Trump to lose. Maybe. Because it depends on the perspective of the character on certain issues. If they are on board for the Iran stuff, I don't care who's on the other side. Hands off. I don't care. Let it fail. I am not the one concentration camp less person. They will fail. That is not a perspective that I would co-sign. I don't care who's on the other end. If they are not for Medicare for all, again, they will fail. I am even at the point that if you're accepting campaign donations from like the super wealthy, like the super PACs and all that stuff, I am still in that camp of let them fail, which would mean Elizabeth Warren, sorry. I don't like political weakness in this sense anyway, so Elizabeth Warren was a stretch for me anyway. Cool Blue 71. FYI, when looking at general election polls, says Democrats wins at 22 at 22 margins for states count +5, 27 states. Pattern since 1996. Are you serious? Democrat need 23 states, average 12 electoral votes per state. No way. Is that serious? FYI, when looking at general election polls that says Democrats win, add +22 to the margin for states count. +5 equals 27 states. Democrats need 23 states, average 12 electoral votes per state. You know, I'm. This is going to be a fascinating thing, man. Alexander M. Gonzalez. MSNBC left Bernie Sanders out of the polls because he only got 4%, but Cory Booker made it on with 3%. I don't trust MSNBC, nor do I trust CNN. And ironically, in a weird way, Fox News has been doing a better job on this. It's so weird. It's so bizarre. Victoria Lawless. I love that last name, Lawless. Lucy Lawless. That's why I love that last name, Lucy Lawless. A UFO was seen flying near Area 51. I strongly suspect there was something in the government's coffers. I strongly suggest that. What's his name? Bob Ramirez doesn't like him, but what is his name? Bob Lazar. Bob Lazar. I know you guys don't like Bob Lazar. At least I know some of you don't like Bob Lazar. But there are questions with Bob Lazar that skeptics have a hard time dealing with. How on earth did Bob Lazar know that the craft was going to be flying on that night? How on earth did Bob Lazar get access to the base? Like, how on earth did because the problem is, Bob Lazar didn't do this by himself. When Bob Lazar was working at Area 51, Bob Lazar actually contacted people and had them come to see the UFO. He even contacted the news station to get them to see the UFO. And all of these people were in on it, and all of these people knew that Bob was a part of it. They even went back and found the guy who did the interviews for the government that was doing the hiring for Area 51. Whatever you want to think of him, there's a there to it. There's a there. I guess my point is, Bob makes the point that these guys have craft that look like UFOs. So, I mean, if there's something that they saw flying around Area 51, I would suggest that was something of ours. Anunnaki, ancient alien stuff. I'm not a believer in that. People send me UFO stuff all the time. It's funny, which is why I was going to do the channel Black Box. I gotta be honest, I am skeptic with a lot of this stuff. And maybe more of a skeptic than I think many people are that pay attention to this. And I think part of that has to do because I do a news show. And in doing a news show, it has to be something that I can put my hands on, that I can that there's enough substance that I can argue it, that I can defend the position. And if it's not something that I can defend the position, I tend to not go there, whether I believe it, give it credibility or not. You must understand how I started this. I started this from the perspective of having weird stuff happen to me as a kid and not understanding what that weird stuff was and being open to odd phenomena because of the weird stuff that happened to me as a kid. And from that point, being open. I mean, it's like if you wake up and there's an alien that's leaning over your bedside and you're staring at him, you're wide awake. And then the next morning, well, not even next morning, because somebody at that point would say it's a dream. But if you get abducted in broad daylight, and then your car ends up 3 hours later, and somebody says, yeah, you probably just fell asleep. What do you mean I fell asleep? I ended up in another state. Yeah, I can't explain it, but, the other stuff doesn't make sense. The entire thing doesn't make sense. Like, are you going to allow yourself to be gaslighted into believing that the experience that you had was not the fact of experience that you had? And somebody who's never had an experience is telling you that it didn't exist. No, it's nonsense. None of these people understand what reality and how reality is constructed. And if they are telling you that they do, so they're lying to you. It's an open question. Because it's an open question, I tend to regard it honestly and say I don't know. And so when this stuff comes up, I'm fascinated by it because all of it is an open question to me. It's like it's like trying to dance on the head of a pin, not believing or disbelieving. I kind of, it's hard to explain. I think weird stuff happen, man. It's just weird, odd stuff. Oh, but my point is this: there was people send me UFO stuff all the time. There was some kind of new leak or something that came out, but I don't necessarily know the paper trail to it, so I can't really cover it if I don't know the paper trail and if I can't verify it. I did consider covering it on Black Box. Agent Mulder, right? I know, right? Agent Mulder. The truth is out there. I've had a similar dream, but no abduction experiences. I've had. This is more complicated. My rule. This is probably a Black Box thing. I probably need to cut it for Black Box. My rule is to try it. That's been my rule going back since I was like 19 years old. If the world is an open thing, try it. If people are saying, when I sit under a pyramid in a cross thing, I can get into a resonance and I can expand my mind to the cosmos. Don't immediately assume the guy's a lunatic until you try it. Then you can say the guy's a lunatic. The reason I do that, or the reason I kind of go with that idea, is because how do you know? I mean, I've done things where I was like, okay, I feel like an asshole. I've done other things that have gained results. I've had other things that were muddier or more murky. The UFO stuff was more murky. I started my research into UFO stuff at the other end of the spectrum. Like, I didn't start with UFO stuff. I started with New Age stuff. You know, like OBEs, spirit guide, that type of stuff. Because my thing was, if it's real, I want to know. If it's not real, is what it is. Keep it moving. And from that angle, getting to questioning the UFO stuff. And in questioning UFO stuff, my question was basic. Is it real? Basic question. And if it is real, how can you validate it? And how can you nail it down? Now, there are a few points to this. There are a lot of people who have all sorts of experiences. Some of these people are lunatics. Not all. Some are lunatics. Some have very severe psychological problems. And it's hard, very hard, when you're coming to the subject and starting off, to disassociate the lunatics from people who aren't. It is not easy. And not just not easy, in some degrees, terrifying. I scared the shit out of myself many a nights with that stuff. And it didn't stop me one iota. But it's like it's like a horror movie, but it's a horror movie in the context of these people saying it's not fake, it's real. It's that type of stuff. And so when I first started getting into it, my thought was, if it's real, I need to prove it, or I want to prove it, or at the very least, I want to try to validate it. And I started looking for anybody who said, this is how you can contact me. I didn't care what it was. I wanted to at least try it. I felt like an asshole, but I wanted to at least try it. Now, what ends up happening is it freaks my wife out. My wife immediately gets freaked out by this, because it's essentially saying meditation, and meditation with a mindset of like calling something to you. Now, this, keep in mind, this is like after maybe a year of being really, and it's hard to, God, man, maybe 3 years ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I went through this phase where it was an all-consuming need to know. I couldn't think about anything else, couldn't talk about anything else, which immediately freaks my wife out. Because the moment I get into this mindset, my mindset is, all right, there's no point in just kind of resonating here. Try to figure it out. Like, is there anybody on this planet that has information about this? And if so, how can I validate that information? Like, that's where I went with it. That was my perspective on it. That's always my perspective. And then when you find people saying, okay, meditation, and then some people say, okay, try these techniques, and some people say OBEs, and so you go down the list. And then it's like, all right, let's try OBEs. Because at the very least, I can be conscious, and there's no break in consciousness in regards to any kind of contact in this sense. And this says meditation. Let's try the meditation. Let's do all of it. Let's do it all. And there are nights where I'm in bed and I'm in my meditative thing, and my wife is like, look, I'm not saying I believe this shit, but just be aware you have a wife laying beside you. Now, her point in this was, it's like somebody gives somebody a cross, and they said, I didn't think you believed in it. I don't believe in it, but people say it worked either way. It's like a zigzag thing. And she's like, look, I'm not saying I believe in this stuff. You know, fucking around. Weird stuff. That was murkier. Like the results of that were murkier. And the results of that were murky to the point where it did freak me out. Like, it scared the shit out of me for a while. Like for a window of time, for a small second, it scared the shit out of me. I had several experiences with that left you in this kind of, all right, my subconscious is fucking with me, because of my preoccupation, or there's something there, but there's never, it's not overt enough to know. Like it's weird. I started full bore meditation on this stuff, and a few things happened. So my wife and I are walking to the car one day. Something speeds by, extraordinary speeds, and it has it's like a shimmer around it, if that makes sense. It's almost like an egg-shaped shimmer. It goes by, bam, split second, just fast enough for me to recognize that something just flew by, and just fast enough to get a general idea of what the something was. My wife, I said, "Did you see that?" She says, "Yeah, I think I saw something." "What did you see?" "I'm not sure what I saw." Fucking see it. I mean, she says, "Yeah." And I'm like, and it's like, all right, fair enough. You didn't see it exactly. You just saw something, etc., etc. But at the very least, it showed I wasn't crazy. My wife and I are in Egypt, and something blazes across the sky. This bright white, this star, that's just a star, and then it blows up, like in these extreme things. And I'm sitting there staring at it, and I'm like, oh my God, look. And she turns, and we go behind the building. I was like, did you see that? Like, motherfucker, how can you never see it? How do you never see it? How are you always here but never see it? But no, that's what it started. And then I started having dreamscapes, where I never dreamed about aliens in my life, and I started having these dreams. This is what I mean when my subconscious fucking with me. And then it comes to a head where I'm in bed, there's a noise upstairs, and I get up to get out of bed. My wife says, "Are you okay?" I says, "Yeah, I'm good." I said, "If there's something upstairs, I'm going to check it." I take 2 steps and I'm frozen. Can't move. And she says, "Are you all right?" I said, "I can't move." And at this point, I hear something coming down the stairs, and I'm screaming in my head, no. I have never been that scared in my life. And I woke up embarrassed of being that terrified. You have no idea how embarrassed I was. Because my thought was, you asked for it. You did ask for it. Like, whether it's your subconscious screwing with you, whether it's something else, you asked for it. How can you not be okay with it? Now the question becomes, yeah, but I didn't need to be frozen. And, it didn't need to be a pitch black at night. And, this is kind of creepy. I mean, because, I'm hearing something coming down the stairs and I can't move. Like, this is not necessarily the setting where things are going to be a kumbaya. By the same token, what is the setting where things are kumbaya? Like, what is the other side of that? Is there a setting where things will be kumbaya in this situation? What are you going to expect when you can't expect? We don't know what to expect. So nothing happens. Everything stops after this. For a month. And it happens again. Now, this time, this outcome is different because I am more of a badass in this one. I'm terrified, but the setting is the same. Something's upstairs. Something's coming down the steps. But this time I wasn't able to get out of bed. I was frozen in place. And my wife, who in retrospect probably wasn't my wife because there's no way she responded in this way. But I'm freaking out. I am losing it. I am freaking the fuck out. Again, terrified. Because it's not like, it's not a conscious thing. It's like something's happening. You know something's happening. And it's massively abnormal. And you can't move. Like you're restrained. And it's like your body's forsaking you or something. And she tells me, she says, calm down. I was like, what do you mean calm down? She says, look, this is what you wanted. And not just this is what you wanted. This is going to happen regardless. Meaning, whether you're freaking out or not, something is coming downstairs. And something is going to come into the room. Just calm down. And in that moment, I thought, she's right. I did ask for this. And not just ask for this. I do want to know. And the moment that my mind flipped from this thing of, oh my God, terrified to, well, what is it? Like this kind of curiosity thing. The curiosity factor kicked in. I'm For me, that matters more than the fear part. In fact, I'm okay with being scared shitless if later on it's something I get out of it, like an understanding. And something comes downstairs, it comes into the room, and I still can't move. But that started to ebb away. The moment I got more curious, as opposed to being afraid, I started to be able to move, and I started to be able to pull my head up. And as I pull my head up, and I turn around, I hear them talking, and they're saying, he's curious, he's curious. Now, the only way you can know if he's curious if you're listening to what I'm thinking. And they're like, he's curious, he's curious. And as I start to pull up, I see something looking directly at me, and it's an African-American woman. Now, I say to myself, BS. BS. Yeah. Bob, sleep diarrhea coupled with... Oh, God, that's gross. That's gross. That's gross, Trudy. Oh, that's nasty, Trudy. That's nasty. Judith Walden, it's sleep paralysis. Just move a finger. Now, I'm okay with sleep paralysis, Judy. I use sleep paralysis in order to get out of OBEs. Most people, when they're dealing with sleep paralysis, may be freaked out, but not me. You must understand, that's a stepping point. It's not something that bothers me. In fact, trying to get to it is the hardest part to me. When I was doing OBE stuff, the goal was to get your body to shut off with your mind still active. Not the easiest thing to do. Like sleep paralysis is the good part. But I get your point. But this wasn't sleep paralysis. If anything, I was dreaming. But if it wasn't a dream, it's freakier. My subconscious is fucking with me. I've experienced Jamarl Thomas. Wait, it was a black woman. Yeah. I said bullshit to that. I was literally in the dreamscape saying bullshit. I said yes. You must understand how terrible. Like it is the weirdest thing in the world to not be able to move. And whether it's like your subconscious is screwing with you or what, it doesn't really matter. You're wherever you are right now, and whatever you're doing right now, all of this is being experienced in your head. You understand that, right? Like there is little to no difference between you dreaming your reality and you engaging with your reality. All of your impulses are still in your heads. Whether, there's nothing, let me say it this way. There's nothing you can't experience in your head that you can't experience in the outer world. I mean, there's just by definition. Everything happens in your head. Every signal, every thought, every, movement of your arm, everything that you, all in here. Darkened room, darkened shell. My point is this. Anything that I experience in that state, it's almost identical to something that you experience in the real world. There's no difference. Your body experiences those things. You have all of the sensations and everything else. You perceive it to be real. And at that point, I got to be honest, I didn't know the difference. Like, this wasn't one of those things where I could tell the difference between one or the other. It seemed real. And nothing was out of place. Everything was kind of like, it's like, I used to do a lot of lucid dream when I was younger. And there are times where it's like, there's sometimes deviations, things where you end up falling out of the dreamscape into kind of lucidity. This was weird because there was a certain degree of lucidity associated with it, but the lucidity didn't matter because I didn't know I was dreaming. Like it's like think of a lucid dream where you're lucid but you don't realize you're dreaming. I guess at the point you can say you're not lucid, but you kind of are. It's hard to explain. Yeah, it's weird. It's a quasi thing. It's bizarre. All right, this has gone an hour. And we've been talking about nonsense. I got to be honest, guys. Like I was like, this is gonna be a long night. So I'm gonna end this here. Jamarl Thomas is interesting. Yeah, I've had weird stuff, Marcus. I've had really bizarre stuff. When I got to be honest. When I was younger, I go deaf when I go to sleep. Everybody does, Trudy. Wait, that's not true. Everybody, that's not true. Yeah, that's not true. I don't go deaf. No, yes. Fuck, Trudy. So yes and no. This sounds funny. The When I am asleep, anything that's playing around me gets interpreted into the dream. So like if the television is on, it gets transmitted into a dream. Like it's the most bizarre thing. And the same thing is true for my wife. Like if we're sitting there like watching a horror film, and she wakes up in a panic, like freaked out, and she's like, "You got this shut on when I'm sleeping." But now take it to another level. In lucid states or OBE states, when I am losing cohesion in those states, I go blind and deaf. Now, what I mean by that is, imagine for the moment, you know you're dreaming. Like imagine, not just you know you're dreaming. Imagine for the moment you interact with the dream state. Like it's somewhat of a pliable role. That you have a body, that body is in a bed, and you are in another space, another dimensional space. You're free floating. You can walk around. You can talk to the people. You can look at the sky. You can get in your car and drive to the store. You're in a lucid dreamscape. Now, everything in the dreamscape may not be a one-to-one. You get in the car, you drive to the store, and it's not really a store. It's like your mom's house, but your mom is supposed to be on the other side of town. It's that type of stuff. It's not always a one-to-one with the actual world. To some degree, it's a dreamscape, but you're lucid in the dreamscape. And the dreamscape, in some cases, are even pliable, meaning will. This is odd in and of itself because you realize that you're in a different dimension, that your brain is creating this. And when you realize that your physical matter reality gets a little more pliable, it gets stranger. In that state, you can talk to people and get information. I know this is even weird, but I swear to God, it's true. Some of that information are from people who have been with you for your entire life. And when I say people, it is unclear whether all of this is within the context of you or whether some of this is outside of you. We assume that our thoughts are entirely our own. That's an assumption. We assume that. Now, it's not a horrible assumption. It's an assumption just based on the way we interact with one another and the fact that people aren't hearing each other's thoughts. But it is an assumption nonetheless. My point is this. It is hard to know, and I would even go so far as impossible to know, whether everything that's interacting in those states are purely you. Because some of this stuff seems outside of you. And even though it seems outside of you, it still can be an aspect of you, but it's somewhat of an open question sometimes. I don't know. I've had weird stuff happen. I've had weird stuff. No, I'm not psychic. It's not that way. Drug dealer stash. Yeah, some of this stuff is weird. Like I said, I've had weird stuff happen when I was younger, and it pointed me in a direction that I think I would have been in a different direction if I was a different way. All things being equal, I probably would have been an atheist if I was a different household, raised differently, or had different experiences. But in this case, I am not. Remote viewing, yes. Did that. I just pictured them all being tested by Peter Venkman. Oh, Peter Venkman. Bob, you're telling our age, man. You're telling our age. Is it normal, though? J.M. Clinton? I don't know what normal is. It depends on what you mean by normal. Yeah, it's weird, man. It's weird. I mean, but look, one of the more interesting thing that I hit my head on was that the stuff that people do when they're talking about like OBE stuff or trying to meet spirit guides, or something that's there, and the naming is problematic. Like I give you an example. When I was younger, I think I was 18 years old, I came across somebody who was talking about spirit guides, and I was like, there's no fucking way. There's no way this exists, because if it does, oh my God, it was that. And she was straightforward. She says, this is what you do to meet your guide. Fine. Fine. If this is what it is, then this is what I'm gonna do. And what I realized starting off, there's a fear quotient. Like there's a fear hurdle. Like there's a you get scared. I don't know how else to say it. Like you hit this point and your body you get scared. Like I remember I started doing the meditative stuff and I would get maybe a few minutes in and I would feel like I was being plugged into an outlet. Like it felt like there was a surge going through you, at which point it's like, all right, I'm done. Fuck that, I'm done. And it would happen over and over and over again. This went on for like a month or more. This went on for months. And I would lay down, get into the meditative state, in the groove, I'm feeling it. And I'm asking, I was like, all right, is there anybody here? Is there anybody here? Is there anybody here? Am I the only one here? Nothing. And then it happens. You feel like you're plugged into an outlet. It's almost like you're going through a barrier of sorts. And stop it. It's like it wouldn't fail. And it took one morning for me to kind of just let it happen. It was just like, oh, fuck it. Just let it happen. And it happens. You're plugged into an outlet. And it's like, all right, now what? Because my thought is, something's changed. I just don't know what's changed. Something's changed. And I said hello. And I hear a woman's voice standing beside my bed saying hello. Oh! It's like, and at this point, everything, like all of this stuff, I wasn't even scared. I just have all this stuff flooding in me where all of these questions just at once. At which point the state was broken. Completely woke up. Now, the very next night, immediately after this, the first person I called was my mom. I said, you'll never believe this. And she's like, what? I said, I think I made contact. What do you mean you made contact? I'm in bed. I'm plugged in. And I said hello, and somebody says hello back. And my mom is like, now, the funny part was my mom's reaction. My mom believes her son because my mom knows her son is so skeptical of this stuff. And if I'm this, hyped up about it, all right. So in her mind, my mom has been a Christian her entire life. And my mom says, I'm going to meet my spirit guide too. Fair enough. Now, the very next night, I shit you not, she makes contact. And I'm terrified. She makes contact. I'm standing, I'm lucid, completely lucid. I am me. There is no deviation between who I am and who I was in that state. You are essentially in an OBE or lucid state. And I'm in a room and I'm by myself. And I don't know what's going on. This is kind of like out of it. And someone walks up to me and they say, you're gonna meet your guide. It's something to that effect. And I start hyperventilating. Now, one of the things that I notice is when I come out of the room, there's nobody else in the room, and then people start walking out of the room. Now, again, I am just me, and I know there was nobody in that room. I have no idea how there are now people coming out of the room, and that freaks me out. Because again, I am me. I am entirely lucid. And this is a lot of weird shit that has taken place that I can't necessarily process. I start hyperventilating. Somebody comes and gives me a bag. And I started kind of hyperventilating into the bag. And they said, look, just get yourself together. And, essentially calm down. And I get my shit together. And eventually a woman comes over, older, white. And she says, my name is so-and-so. I'm your expositor. I don't remember her name. The only thing I remember is the expositor. And she goes into she goes into testing of sorts. Like I know this sounds bizarre, but it's how it worked. This is what happened. And some of the testing. And look, if you want, I can go into what I learned from this, and not even just learn from this, learn from subsequent experiences with her. But this was probably the most profound, and this honestly sets the content the rest of my life in regards to how I perceive this stuff. I needed to get from point A to point B. And there were barriers that were between these points, but the barriers were energetic. They weren't like solid materials. They were energetic. I don't know how to describe it. And the test was essentially, can he do it? That was the test. Can he get from point A back to point B, and do so in like how? I do it. I have no idea how I do it. But what I realized was there's a lot of information that you're retaining that you don't necessarily have access to. And to some degree, the test, I think, was how much information do you have access to that you aren't necessarily consciously aware of. Again, from a conscious person standpoint, there's certain things that seem to be blocked off, that seem to be, that you have access to in those states. Then she merges. And what I mean by merges, God, it sounds weird. Her being starts to get close to me. And at this point, I'm like, oh my God, I'm about to be molested. She's about to take advantage of me. This has gone horribly wrong. I literally in that moment thought, oh my God, what is about to happen? She gets closer and closer to me, and I keep thinking, I'm going to be molested. I can't believe this is about to happen. And instead of her touching me, she goes through me and exists with, like, it's a blending. And it's euphoric. Euphoric. It's like a high. It's a high on top of a high. You can't describe it any way else. Think of whatever drug magnified times 20 and then add a chaser. It is extreme. It's like nothing I've ever felt since. I can't describe it. There's nothing that I've felt in my lifetime that comes close. It is extraordinary. And she's sharing thoughts. Like it's that part's hard to explain. The only part I can explain is from the standpoint of a merger. It also gets across that you weren't solid, even though you're perceiving yourself as being solid in this particular state. At the end of that, she sits me down and she talks. She just talks to me. And there are two things that I remember from that conversation. Two main things. One is she gets into this notion of evolution, meaning the person, the individual. And the second thing she says, when I was there, I had to exercise. And it ends on that note. I wake up and I call my mom because at the time, this was something that I had been, like after the first thing, this was a follow-up. So she was in the loop. And I wrote it down, if I'm not mistaken, but it was one of those things where that's mind-blowing. Like mind-blowing. And not just mind-blowing. For the next 2 or 3 years, I started having the most bizarre phenomena, like nobody's business. Like, it would be stuff like lucid dream states, constantly. Like, it wasn't something that I could control. It was something that just happened, and it would be over and over and over again. And in those states, you could call her back. Call for, and in one case, somebody else showed up in her steed. Kinsia. I did get her name, because it was the first thing I asked for. By the same token, the name doesn't matter. The name is irrelevant. She can give you any fucking name. What more important is their role. Most people doesn't even know they exist. So, there's that. No, man, I've had a weird life, man. I mean, like in these terms. I used to have this notion where I have this framework of the world. There's some spirit, there's this and that. And then as I got older, no fucking clue. Like, I've stuck with this notion of, I have no idea. I have no idea. Seems to be a more honest answer than any kind of framework that you can create from that stuff. And as you get further into the UFO stuff, my understanding of this shit goes out the window. Like, honestly. The best thing that you could say is, here are the experiences. What do they mean? No clue. No clue, no clue, no clue. The stuff, when you start reading UFO accounts, the UFO accounts sound so similar to the New Age accounts that you could literally take one and replace it. and you would never know the difference. If you look at some of the groups like that are in South America that does the contact stuff, and you look at even Greer, like Greer's a blowhard, but Greer does have the immediate the military contacts and stuff like that. He's had all these interviews. The process is so similar that it is bizarre. It's so bizarre. It's really bizarre. So, all right, I'm going to end this because this one is going so far off the rails. We're an hour and 20 minutes, and I have real stories. U.S. blames Iran. Chelsea Manning starts her $500. Gets holds $500 a day. Alex Jones sends porn to the family lawyers. Even Cenk Uygur saying it'll be mental not to vote for Joe Biden. So I'll end this here, man. This has gone way too long. Let me read the things. Let's see. Giovanni Liviana. Trump didn't win so much as Hillary lost. That is true. I don't think Trump even thought he was going to win. I think Trump was shocked as anybody else. Shane Wolf. I like thinking about it. I think all the Navy talk is just mind games with adversaries, a way to get them wondering what we got. See, you're assuming that the other places don't have it too. You realize that the Soviet Union, China, all of these countries were involved in trying to get material like this and getting information on the subject. The only difference is, it's possible that the United States is running some kind of operation on this. One or two things is possible. All of these countries are kind of in it for themselves, meaning all of these countries are trying to get information and so forth, in which case any of these countries could come out and says, yes, this is true, and here are our files that say so. Now, France has opened their files. I think Britain has opened their files. The United States and the Navy switching to this and allowing you to even talk to the pilots is astonishing. Like, because this is not conjecture anymore. Like, what do the skeptics say? That the pilot is lying? That the boat that's recording that stuff is lying? Even if you want to say that what the pilot saw was something else, meaning it was some kind of some other kind of phenomena, that's even weirder. Like the UFO phenomena, in this case, like the explanation, is one of the most mundane explanations, as opposed to some other explanation of what those pilots were seeing. Now, if you want to see those pilots were seeing some kind of military aircraft that they didn't say anything about, fair enough. I'll go with that one. If you want to say that there is some black budget project that other countries have that are kind of fair enough. I'll even go with that. If you want to say that are drones, I think you're insane. Because at the end of the day, whatever you want to say it is, you have to at the very least acknowledge that the pilots, with an S, were seeing something, and that the Navy wouldn't change their protocol for no reason. The problem that the Navy was having was that people would think they were functionally insane for all of these pilots to be like, we're seeing this, and the Navy to be like, yeah, nothing to see here, folks. How do you say there's nothing to see here, folks, when you have a list of people for the last several years, for God knows how long, but definitely in the last few years, and those videos are hitting the press and hitting the front page of the New York Times, and your response to it is, mum. Yeah, mum doesn't work. Do you realize Donald Trump was briefed? Congress was briefed. Military was briefed. All of these guys were briefed on the UFO stuff. This is fascinating. Jamal, have you ever tried a hero dose of magic mushrooms? Expanding electrons, not a hero dose. Not a hero dose. No. Hero dose. I love that. So I've tried mushrooms. Yes, I've tried shrooms when I was in Amsterdam. They didn't work. To be fair, I didn't give them a chance to work. If I'm being fair, the guy, he was like, "Look, go eat half. Go take these to the park. Eat half, and then eat the other half, and then 10 minutes, nothing happens." And so that's what I did. I sat there in the park. I ate half, and then I ate, I think, the other half like a little bit of time later, and I get lost. I'm trying to find my way back. And like, if you're under threat or something like that, when you're kind of like stoned or something, you're like, bam, you're just aware. And so it's like you're walking through the streets and you're lost in a foreign country, and your mind is like, you're You're like on it, man. So it's like, did I not give them a chance to work because I started getting freaked out because I couldn't figure out where I was? I've never tried a hero dose. I don't know fully what a hero dose. Oh, you said 5 grams. I haven't tried a hero dose. Loving this conversation. Thanks, JT. Trudy. Thanks, Trudy. This is a weird conversation, man. This is a weird combo. All right, I'm going to end this here. This is a black box conversation. That's what this is. This should be on black box. Yeah, this should be on black box. This was a black box conversation. All right, guys, I'm going to end this. It's 8:30 here, and I have a lot of shows to do. So, if you guys enjoy the content, please consider supporting through PayPal, Patreon, liking, sharing, etc., etc., etc. These guys are hitting us pretty hard with the YouTube apocalypse, so please consider supporting in some way. I mean, not a push by any iota. Support if you're digging it. If you do, and honestly, I mean that. Like, it's not it's. And by support, I mean, liking, sharing, it works. Whatever it is. Whatever the degree to which you like it, please support. Thanks all. I'll see you in like 10 minutes. I'll be back 15. Thanks all.